Like at school, always felt odd. When I played at the Dragons, when I played at a footy club, I always felt a little bit different to other people. And that was what I now know as conditioning. So the way my brain dealt with incoming stimulus was I felt a little bit out of it.
What happens when your dream ends and you don't know who you are without it? Today's guest is Tony Priddle, a former NRL player for the St George Dragons turned high performance mindset coach. In this episode, Tony shares the remarkable story of going from country footy to first grade in just 1 year. But the real insight comes in what happened next. When his playing career ended, Tony faced a deep identity crisis, questioning his purpose, his worth, even his very existence. That journey of curiosity, struggle, and self-discovery led him to the world of mental skills and peak performance. Now as a coach, Tony helps others to control their mind, to shift their thinking, and rediscover purpose beyond their titles. This conversation is raw, it's reflective, and it's packed with insight for anyone navigating transition, chasing growth, or wanting to unlock more for themselves. If you're ready to think differently and perform at a higher level, this one's for you. I'm Ian Hawkins, and this is Sport is Life. The purpose of sport as I see it is to see your vision become a reality. Find your voice, create strong connections, and learn to trust your body. Hey Tony, how you going?
I'm good, mate. How's yourself?
Going well, thank you. Thanks for coming on.
No problem. I'm just starting to get back out into the world again. I've been coaching for a long time, but I'm just starting to get a website built and all that kind of stuff. Been working for about 13 years and haven't had a website.
Well, that's a good lesson for the business owners there, that when they're starting out, is don't waste your time on a whole lot of those things that aren't necessarily important. I think I got caught in that trap early on, logos and websites and that sort of stuff. But sometimes you just got to get out there and just start business, right?
Well, basically, I've always had a fascination with knowing and understanding what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to Sydney to play football, I was actually studying a sports science degree in conjunction with the first 3 years I was there.
Oh, cool.
So
I imagine that would not have been commonplace to be studying as a rugby league player back in those days.
Well, it was just before the era we went professional.
Yeah.
So it was more and more like the St George pack of the day that I played in. We had out of 8 regular players, 6 had university degrees. So it was a little bit unusual. Yeah.
Yeah, right. How did you come to be at the Dragons? You said when you moved to Sydney. Where did you grow up?
Grew up on the northern New South Wales in Maclean.
Yeah. And did they come find you, or did you head down to Sydney and take a punt, or how did all that work?
No, we had a really good school team.
Yeah.
So for a town of 3,000 people, we had a really good school team. And in I think it was 1988, I was in year 12, and we gave it a good crack in the state competition or the national competition. And then the next year, basically got asked to come back to school to just play football. And in that year, we made the grand final of the University Shield.
Yeah, wow.
So there was myself and Cecil Heron who played together and both got contracted at St George, but it was sort of through that school system. And also that year I made the New South Wales under-19s team as well. So had an interesting flight to one of the state of origin in Lang Park when I was 18 years old, which was interesting.
That was the curtain raiser, was it? Like the under-19s before the main game. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So that had a really good year. So state under-19 team, and then in the country rugby league, so made it through country reps, went on to play for New South Wales, had a state of origin where that was in the days when Laurie Daly made the state of origin team, and he could have been in our under-19s team.
Oh, wow.
So him and Clyde could have been both in our under-19s team, and they were playing state of origin. So
that's the difference in class, right? Do guys like that?
Yes. So, and then we made the University Shield Grand Final, and basically two of the Maclean High School team were contracted to St George the next year.
Amazing.
So that was myself and Seth.
Yeah. So when you moved to Sydney, like, is that a massive shock to the system, or were you that excited you just embraced everything that came with it?
Well, I was a kid that didn't feel like he fitted in. Even though I was in the first 13, the first 15, I was a national level rower at school. So not a bad athlete.
Yeah.
However, I never felt I had a place. And that's always been one of the things that was a story that I used to tell myself, obviously. But when I went to Sydney and went to uni and played at the Dragon, I actually felt like I went home.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't like it wasn't all roses and rainbows, but I just felt home in the big city, whereas I didn't feel like the small country town was home.
And was that part of like the culture at the club, the change of location, or a whole lot of different things?
Change of location and going to university and being a sports science degree, everyone in that sport and science degree was a different level of sport.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of some of the best athletes in Australia doing a sports science degree. So that felt like home. I was still a little bit not so comfortable with the football environment because I had a different way of viewing the world, I suppose. And I came down to Sydney thinking it wasn't the NRL at that point in time. It was the Australian Rugby League, maybe. It was the NRL. So I thought it was going to be really, really professional.
Yeah.
And basically, it was like a big country rugby league club.
Interesting.
That was my impression. So may not have been true, but that was my impression. So, and I was expecting, all the boys to be, on your team and supportive and all that kind of stuff. And when someone came in and was a little bit different, so being a front rower, we back in the olden days, we'd run 800s and 400s and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd just come off the back of a full rowing season, which is a anaerobic threshold sport.
Yeah.
And I was 90 kilos running against 120 kilo front rowers and smashing them.
I bet.
So that was in the fitness area.
Yeah. Some of those guys wouldn't have taken too kindly, I imagine, for a new person coming and making them look bad.
No, it wasn't a smart thing to do.
You're right. Tell us what happened.
Well, you can imagine like 120 kilo, like 110, 120 kilo blokes. Yeah. And I was 90 kilos ringing wet, like 6'4", 90 kilos. My playing weight, like in 2 years time. So 92, 93 was 108.
Oh, wow.
So, so had to put on a lot of weight. But that first year I was there and I could run with the centers. Front rowers didn't do that back then.
No.
So I got so what happened when we started doing contact drills?
You got belted.
Yeah, I got the shit beat out of me. because I was a smart ass in the running, like, considered a smart ass in the running side of it. Because
payback time.
so
I remember, I think it was Owen Cunningham. They talked about, he turned up at Manly, the sort of same sort of build, and he talked about how he got put on the pies and beers diet to bulk up. Was that a bit more scientific where you were at the Dragons, or a similar sort of story?
Well, so first year I got told I needed to drink stout.
Yes, that's what it was. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's where I went, hang on, I'm doing a sports science degree and you're telling me to drink beer to get put on weight? That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah. But you did it anyway?
No.
No?
I did not. I was pretty, for early 90s, I was probably pretty meticulous with my diet and nutrition and all that kind of stuff. Well, I thought I was real professional, I should say.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was, but I thought I was.
Relatively speaking, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I just had a different mindset, like I always have.
Yeah.
So, and always felt a bit odd, but that's.
So, yeah, and you said that before. You said, like, you kind of looked at the world a different way. Like, is it something you can put your finger on, or was it just that it was so different in terms of how the norm was in that environment?
It's been a thing since I was a kid, and I know this because I've systematically worked through most of that stuff.
Yeah,
but I just, like, at school, always felt odd. When I played at the Dragons, when I played out at footy club, I always felt a little bit different to other people. And that was what I now know as conditioning. So the way my brain dealt with incoming stimulus was I felt a little bit out of it.
Yeah, right.
Like,
so sorry, go on.
No, you're good.
So how did that show up for you? Like, how did you feel, and what impact did that have in your football first and foremost, and then also how did that flow through to other areas of your life as well?
How did I feel? Always felt odd, like different.
Yeah.
So never felt like I truly fitted in. The first place I really thought I fitted in was uni, which was...
Yeah, right. Is that because it's like-minded people, same interests? Again, they're seeing the world a little bit differently, or again, you couldn't even define it because it was just more of a feeling.
Yeah, it was literally a feeling. But yes, it was a bunch of people who were thrown together, like after school. They were all good at what they did. Virtually, like we had a Olympian who was a judo player.
Yeah.
Like I can just remember little things like that where we were mucking around in the gym one day and I ran at her and I said, "What would you do if I was coming at you?" And she just picked me up and just flipped me over and put me on the ground. And it was this was second year, so I was actually playing first grade at that time.
Yeah.
And it was like she just flicked me like I wasn't even there. So it was just awesome to have, like, we had an Olympic water polo player. There was just a bunch of athletes that were there and everyone was just doing the best they could with what they had.
Yeah, it's cool. It sounds very similar to me when I did the PE teaching degree. It's a whole lot of people that had a passion for sport, and there was certainly some very talented people amongst that group, but there was just, like, it didn't matter what your speciality was. Everyone just like had the sort of similar interests, and I could definitely relate to that. When you went to the Dragons, so you played. Did you say you got into first grade within that second year? Is that right?
I played first grade in the first year I was there.
Yeah, wow. And even though you weren't a big, like, body, how did you, like, was there something specific that they saw that had you jumping up there so quick?
Two blokes didn't turn up. Two blokes turned up late for training.
Excellent. Was it Brian Smith the coach then?
No, it was Craig Young.
Ah, right.
So Craig Young was the first year I was there, and he gave me my shot because the two front rowers didn't turn up for training. So they turned up late for training, so they were dropped.
Do you remember that first game? Who did you play against?
Played against a Peter Sterling, captain Parramatta.
Yeah, wow. They had some big lads.
I do remember that game.
Big lads in that forward pack too, didn't they?
Yeah, and the things of rugby league. We were walking off the field. We got beaten that day, and someone in the crowd yelled at me while I was walking off, going, "Go back to 21's where you belong." And I just went,
"Wow,
okay." I said, more stuff gets said nowadays, I bet, but it's that's what that was. But I mean, I got to virtually play against one of my idols and my father's team.
How
so
good.
My dad went for Parramatta, and that was the first game I got to play in first grade. It was at Cogra Oval, and if you said I'd be playing first grade in the first year I was down in Sydney, I wouldn't have even thought about it.
Yeah. Bit different to these days when the whole family would have been flown down and they would have done a social media post of you finding out you played first grade. But for you, it probably would have just been a passing comment at training, would it? And away you go.
It was like, well, I turned up for training at 21's training because it was back then 21's reserve grade first grade.
Yeah.
So I was training with the 21's team and just got pulled up in the first grade.
Do you feel like you gave a good account of yourself?
Well, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So you think all the step-ups are going to be really difficult?
Yeah.
If you're trained for it, if you're conditioned for it, first grade's not much difference to playing in state league. It's just you've got a whole bunch of better players around you. And the standard is higher. So the first game, I think I did pretty well for the training and conditioning and all that kind of stuff I had. Second game, not so much. I got to play another half a game and missed one tackle blatantly, and that was the last time I played first grade in 1990.
There you go. And so then when Craig Young moves on at the end of this season, is that what you said?
Yeah. Craig Young finished in 1990, and then Brian Smith came along.
I'm interested to hear your take, because for me, Brian Smith's got a long list of teams that overachieved, and yet he gets sort of given this title of, like not good enough. But I just think he had so many teams that he got punching so far above their weight. I know, there's a lot of talent in a lot of those teams too, but he just seemed to. I could listen to him talk when he was on the radio for hours, because he just seemed really interesting, and he seemed to understand the game better than most. Is that a fair call?
He was a tactician to the decimal point. I knew what I was doing. I was really good with Brian Smith because I knew my role.
Yep.
And I could fulfill my role. So, however,
can you give us some? Oh yeah, go.
I just wish I knew what I knew now when I was playing for Brian Smith.
How so?
I couldn't mentally cope.
Right. And how did that?
I literally couldn't mentally cope with when everything's going well. So my career went a year in 21s. I got a game in first grade the first year I was there.
Yep.
91, I played 19 games of first grade, virtually coming off the bench. So virtually a first grade player 2 years down in Sydney, second year in Sydney.
Yeah. Yeah, wow.
For 1990, 91, 92 grand final.
Yeah.
Coming from
Crazy.
fifth place, like scraping into the grand final,
Yeah.
and making a grand final. Third year, we lose I think it's 4 games in the season, and one of them was a grand final.
Yeah. Wow.
Might have been 5, but that. So, and I missed 2 games in those
2 years. Yeah, wow.
Like through injury, missed 2 games through injury in those 2 years.
So you talked about mentally. Was part of it because you looking back, you didn't realise just how good you were? Because it sounds like it. You've had these opportunities, and suddenly you're just doing these things that, like, it must have been, like you said, mentally, it must have just been such a whirlwind that, yeah, I'm sure there'd be many times you feel a bit out of your depth.
Oh, well, I don't know. I think there's a lot of elite performers out there who have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And they think like that underneath it. But I didn't have a problem, like a real problem, in the first 4 years I was in Sydney.
Okay.
There was no adversity. I had mental problems, but there was no real adversity in that. I came in, our 21 side made the grand final.
Yeah.
And I again say made the grand final. We didn't win the grand final. But so we had a year where virtually that year, like, how good was football?
Yeah.
Next year, I really didn't care. I got to play first grade. Like, so winning a grand final wasn't on my agenda. My agenda was making and consistently being first grade. And then you go to the next year and you go, holy shit, we just made a grand final.
Yeah, surreal.
I've never, like, when you're in it, you don't realize what's going on. The year after that, we made another grand final. The year after that, I did my ACL. So I didn't have an adversity in the first 4.5 years. I was playing first grade. I did get dropped to reserve grade, and I had a big problem with that in 95.
Yeah.
Then that was when Super League came on board. So I was having an argument with Brian Smith at that point in time. So Super League came along. I signed with Super League, and I was done with St. George.
I want to come back to that because I want to come back to, you said before, mentally, you wish you'd known what you know now mentally. So what are those things that you wish you'd known?
We could cover that. We could just start talking about the mental side of things now, because
yeah, absolutely, dive in.
Because what would I want to know I've just written a book, by the way.
Yeah, good. What's it called?
I haven't got a name for it yet. That's how new it is.
It's literally just written. Yeah, cool.
I'm sending it out to a few people right now to get some feedback on it.
Yep.
But essentially, it's about the principles of thinking. So how to have a performance mind. So, and it's aimed at athletes because I was one, and I would like to give athletes the stuff that I didn't get.
Love it.
Because I see it all the time. I've got an athlete I've been working with this year in the NRL. Didn't understand about his mind. Like, on the fringe of playing first grade, but in and out. This year he hasn't missed a game.
Awesome.
So these are the skills I wish I had. This is the knowledge and the skills and the tools I wish I had. The book's designed around principles of thinking, so a high performance thinking, right? So you go, what would I like to know as an athlete? One, there's only one thing that controls everything, and that is your mind. there is no way you can blame another person or thing for anything, because it's your mind that makes the decision on how to deal with that thing.
Yeah.
You are wasting your time if you have negative emotions and your life is not in danger.
Oh, I like that. That's a good quote.
Well, that's principle. Any negative emotion outside a life or death situation is a waste of time.
Yeah. We're designed to be protected from danger by our that biological part of us, but the majority of danger these days is emotional, and that's often what happens, isn't it? That's a great description there. Love that. Hey, Tony,
just on,
you go. You go.
Oh, so just on that, like you go, okay, well, how many times in a relationship have you had a negative emotion, and then you're still with the person and you're back to normal, 24 hours later? Like you've held a grudge for 24 hours. And I've gone, if I'm going to be with this person, I'm going to work on getting zero negative emotions in my intimate relationship. Because if I take 100% responsibility, that's the first principle I live by. I take 100% responsibility for my emotions, actions, behaviors, and behavior. It's all on me. It's got nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
And when you understand the brain, when you get into the brain now, I have a different theory to most coaches out there. The brain doesn't react to outside stimulus. The brain's a predictive organ.
Fascinating. Tell me more about that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, this is what cognitive science is saying now. The brain is 600 milliseconds ahead of us. It makes a decision 600 milliseconds ahead before it comes out of our mouth. It predicts. Our brain is not reactive. It doesn't go to the stimulus and then go, okay, that person said this thing to me. The brain is predicting what that person will say, and then it will test on the information coming in through the senses whether it's true or not.
To confirm. Oh, damn. That's powerful.
So there's another principle I live by.
Yeah.
It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Love it. And I'm a massive fan of that quote as well. It's such there's a freedom to understanding that, but it's when you first find that out, it is your responsibility, then it can be quite confronting for people when they've spent their lifetime in self-blame, external blame, right?
Well, that's why you have to take 100. That's why the first principle is to take 100% responsibility, and then as we get into it, it's not your fault. But do you know why it's not your fault?
Well, the how I explain it to people is that we've had conditioning and programming from an extremely young age, and we're reacting based on that conditioning. So how could that possibly be your fault as a 0 to 6 year old doing the best that you can to survive in that environment? And that becomes part of your programming in your brain.
100%. That's exactly why.
Yeah.
We are conditioned from negative 9 months, and we virtually have our personality, and this is general, our personality is 75% conditioned by the time we're 8 years old.
Yep.
We're a bunch of 8-year-olds running around out there in the world with an adult body.
Yeah, I mean, people listen to this podcast regularly, hear me talk about these patterns that we're all running, and we're running hundreds at any given time. And there's always another one, right? You peel one back and you reprogram, and then there's another one, and it's not your fault. It's such a powerful message. I love it. Keep going, Tony.
So when you understand, when you go, okay, what would you like to know as an athlete?
Yeah.
I cannot control another person. So I can't control what Brian Smith does.
Yeah.
So what concept would I have loved to have been taught as an athlete, sitting there with Brian Smith when you've had a shit half and you know he's coming into the dressing sheds and he's going to have red blotches all over his face, and one of the players is going to be picked out, and absolutely smashed verbally, like I would walk off the field and go, holy fuck, I hope it's not me today.
The message that I talk about is often that same thing through the lens of youth sport, because it's often the parents that they're worried about having that reaction from. And like being able to teach this this mental resilience for young athletes, so that, I mean, I also work with the parents to help them approach it from a different perspective, but to help them to realize that that's just them acting out their own patterns. It's such a powerful understanding and learning at so many levels.
So if I had this knowledge back then, I could be sitting in the dressing shed, and you know what I'd teach myself? I'd be going, what is Brian Smith's goal here? Brian Smith's goal is to make us athletes the best athletes possible. However he delivers the message is how he delivers the message. I've got to take it from the point of growth. I've got to take it from an angle of understanding that just because he says it in a negative tone, an elevated tone, and he's not talking to Tony Priddle. He's talking to the guy who's wearing number 10 jersey today. The athlete.
Yeah. He's also projecting his own stuff too, right? Like it's
that's where you go, that's when you understand, what can I control? I can't control the coach's temperament. I can't control it. I can only control the way I want to perceive the event.
It's funny. I was only having this conversation in my own head yesterday. If I was to go back to school, like, I would have just been able to have such a positive influence. I was just thinking, if you know what you know now and you have no fear of what people's reactions are going to be, there'd be no bullying. You'd be able to actually bring your year group together. You'd be able to create such a different environment for yourself and others by just not having the same emotional reaction that you've been talking about. Like, and it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about educating parents and young athletes around this, because it just changes everything. It changes how they feel about themselves. It changes how they show up. It changes the relationship dynamic. It's, amazing stuff. Keep going, Tony. I'm sure you've got more to talk about on this.
So expand that out from one player knowing that.
Yeah.
To every player knowing that. And having a mindset, having a mental model of how to think in the dressing shed.
Yeah.
So another one.
Keep going.
So I've just currently been working with an ex-Wallaby. And we're talking, and this is transition into work and all this kind of stuff. So, and he just mentioned one day about, been like worried about copying it in a video session. This is a guy who played, 70, 80 games for the Wallaby. And he's now in the workforce, and he's still talking about how he didn't really cope that well with video sessions, because he was just going, I hope I wasn't the one in the crosshairs. And he literally used those words.
Yeah, wow.
And I've gone, what's the video session for? Well, to make us better. So what if you just went in and went, this is what it's for? You had the mental model that this is what it's for. I'm going to learn. He's not talking to the human. He's talking to the athlete, and it's for the athlete to get better. And he went, that would have been a good idea. And I went, well, that's a mental model that we can start to implement by giving you some thought principles about how to be high performing, because everything is a skill.
Yep. And can be improved, developed, strengthened. So
a motor pattern from university days, like so sports science degree, a motor pattern is developed in the head, right?
Yep.
It's a bunch of neurons firing in a particular pattern to fire the nervous system, in your nervous system, to make muscles work in the right way. How do we get stronger at squatting? We do more squats with weights. That increased that, like your legs and muscles get bigger, but your mind fires a neural pathway harder. It makes more tracks, it gets deeper, and so it's not muscle memory, it's neurological firing pattern memory, and your brain really doesn't forget that. It might start to atrophy, just like your muscles do. But if you've been a trainer for a lot of years, the muscles are going to come back really fast if you get back into training. I don't know why I didn't, put it together way back when, but a thought pattern is a neural firing pattern in your brain. And we know the more you do something, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
So is anxiety and depression a skill that's just been practiced?
Yeah, and reinforced and confirmed by that predictive part of the brain with the expectation of what's going to unfold next.
Yeah, so think about it. You practice negative emotions and you get really good at negative emotions. Are you going to have depression or anxiety? If you just keep practicing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, so we separate the mind and the body. But this drives the body. You want to be good at something. Like, so the first line in the book is basically, how do you have a bad day? And the answer is quite simple. You have a negative emotion.
Yep.
What if, so, and remember, this is a prediction. Your brain's predicting. It's not the outside world that's telling you what to do. It's the internal world, based on your past experience, telling you what to do. What if you could retrain your brain to not have a negative emotion in any situation outside a life or death situation? How would your day be?
Yeah. Fantastic.
How would you turn up to footy training?
Yep.
How would you turn up to a game if you didn't have any negative emotion come in to your world? And people will go, that's impossible. But it's only impossible because they've never known a world that they could think differently like that in.
Yeah, spot on. And that's why you have someone like yourself in your corner, because sometimes, like with the physical aspect, it's helpful to have a coach to help you build that mental muscle, right? Because sometimes you do forget. And I was having this conversation with a young fellow the other day, and he's going, "Oh man, I have to keep doing this stuff." I'm like, "Well, you don't have to, but it's like your physical fitness. Like your mental fitness will deteriorate." And like you described, once you get the muscles built up, and it takes less to keep it at that level. But I don't know about you, mate, but I want to keep building mine and make it stronger and stronger, because look at what you're able to do now.
Well, and on that, we take in 4 billion bits of information per second.
Yeah.
We're capable of being aware of 2,000 of those bits.
Yeah.
And remembering in the first 8 years of your life, 75% of your personality was created.
Yeah.
What did you take on board that you don't even know you took on board?
Yeah.
Basically
absolutely.
everything.
Yeah.
So once you realize how much this process is, and these are little things that have changed my view of the world. We see the light spectrum. So I'm like when I'm coaching people and training people, like we think we're fucking top of the food chain. Like we think we're pretty shit hot on this planet, right?
Yeah.
We see 0.0035% of the light spectrum.
Yeah.
0.0, get the number, 0.0035% of the light spectrum. What don't we see?
Yeah. And this is where people get caught in this when it comes to spirituality and the unknown and all those different things, and like even just rapport, right? That unconscious connection that you and I now have in deep conversation, it just boggles people's mind. But it's like, well, there's a great visual representation that does the rounds on social media, and I just downloaded it again the other day because I thought, this will come in handy. And it's like, there's the bar graph, and it's like, shit you don't know, you know. Oh, sorry. There's a small thing, shit you know, and then there's a slightly bigger part of the pie graph, which is shit you know you don't know, and then there's the rest of the pie graph, which is like 95% or more shit you don't know that you don't know, because that's what it's like, right? There's just so much out there that we can't even comprehend, because, as you say, there's so much data and information coming in, and we only even can bring in a very small percentage of that, and we're not even aware of so much.
Well, the more you go down this path, the more you realize what you don't know.
Correct. Yeah. Have you seen the there's a, I can't remember where I heard it now, but it's like people would rather die and be right. In other words, they will stubbornly stick to their belief rather than admit that maybe they didn't know, or maybe that they were wrong, even to the path of they will continue down a path that they know is eventually going to kill them, rather than admit they're wrong.
Well, we see that every day for sure. Like, people still smoke cigarettes in this day and age.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, yeah.
Well, we know that it increases the toxicity in the body, increases free radicals. So I walk around and look at people and go, that's like, it's just really dumb. Like, I don't care if they smoke or not, but you just go, hang on a minute, so that you sit there and go, okay, don't worry, I'm not perfect either, so people don't get upset about that. But
yeah, exactly.
Smoking's a really dumb thing to do.
Yeah, but as you say, like, we're not perfect, and there's plenty of dumb things out there that people still do, even though they know that it's not good for them. And I think this is where this. Go on.
Sorry, we drive cars and more people are killed in cars than probably most other places. So
exactly.
But we don't even flinch about driving a car.
Nah, it's teaching my children the last few years is like, I went and did one of those track days where they get the expert drivers and they do the high speed stuff and all these other bits of information. I'm like, this would have been really useful to know when I was starting driving 30 something years ago, but they just don't teach it. In other countries they do. But I think what you're really highlighting, Tony, is just how important it is, this information that you're talking about and that will come out in your book, is just how important it is for people to have an awareness of just how much control they do have of what they're doing, where they're heading, and all aspects of their life. I think too often people feel like they're out of control.
If you think your brain reacts to something, you're like, the nervous system's too slow to do that, right?
Yeah.
We couldn't play cricket or baseball or anything like that if we waited to see where the ball's going outside of the pitcher's hand or the bowler's hand. The brain, because it's been trained, conditioned so many times, it's making a guess on where the ball's going to land and what the ball's going to do. It has to, because the nervous system is too slow to run the muscles into that state.
Yeah.
And when you start matching all this stuff up, so the sports science background, and then so I'm obsessed with learning, and just, it's been sort of one of those weird things I've done. So when I get on a topic, I'll be obsessed with the topic.
Yeah.
So in the last 13 years, I'm like, but sort of like the last 5 or 6 years, I'm 300 books into this topic alone.
Wow, that is obsessive. So can we just, we've kind of skipped a few steps ahead, but that's good because you've actually shared some absolute gold there. But you said to me before we jumped on that one of the catalysts for you was like you get to the end of your football career. Well, actually, we better do just a little bit of timeline for people's own following along, because I know one thing that people don't know is that you did sign a Super League contract. And you did have a very brief stint at the Bulldogs, and maybe some of the diehard Dogs fans and Dragons fans might have been aware of that, but most people don't. So had you retired when Super League came, or you were still playing and you're like, okay, I'm like, how did all that unfold?
So I did an ACL in 1995.
Yeah.
So I played from 1990 to 95, 6 years at the Dragons.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's so long ago now. But it's like the olden days. Well, it is the olden days now. But so then I had 96 at Canterbury, and I went there with a reconstructed knee. I did the preseason, and I did it with Billy Johnson. So everyone, I don't know, so anyone who's in rugby league land in rugby league land would know that if you weren't running with the team, you went out and biked and swam and all this kind of stuff with Billy Johnson. So
yeah,
and Steve Folkes.
Yeah.
So I was fit. I came back. My first running session at Canterbury. We didn't do a Bronco or 1.2 like they did. We did it around the field. And the Gillies boys were the market Canterbury.
Yep.
And they were fit. So my first run back, I was third behind Ben Gillies.
Yeah, wow.
Simon was number one, Ben number two, and I came in number three on our first sort of like 1.2K run around the oval.
Yeah.
So my fitness level was never a real problem. That was my speciality. But I did my ACL again 3 games in.
Oh, gutted.
So I had an ACL and then an ACL and then same knee.
Ugh.
Basically, that ended my NRL career because I couldn't get picked up from then. So I had a Super League contract, and I had a 3-year contract. So then I went over to France and played over there with Paris Saint-Germain, and we took 25 Aussies over.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was only 3 real first graders in it. The rest were sort of like fringe first graders and reserve graders.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting experience. We came second last that year, but I lived in Paris. And
how good?
I had an interesting, trip over there, and then had 1 year left on the Super League contract. Had to play somewhere.
Yeah.
So I actually went to Burleigh Bears and played on the Gold Coast because I went, why not have a holiday and play on the Gold Coast?
And so you're probably still the highest paid player that's ever played for Burleigh.
Yeah, probably the highest paid player that's played in the state league in the Queensland Cup. Except for there's a couple of first graders now that the Dolphins have players who are NRL players who are playing state league and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Back in the late 90s, yes, I was definitely probably the highest paid state league player running around. So we had a good season. We missed out on the semis that year. We're all getting drunk around the next year or Mad Monday, and basically went, how about we just all stick together and win the comp next year? So
yeah, nice.
We did that, came back, won the comp, retired.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
The bit I want to dig into more is you said when you finished, like there was an emptiness.
You spend 9 years, like mine was 9 years or 10 years.
Yep.
Around a team, 30 people all the time. You have this instant family like an instant community. And then when I retired, there was nothing there.
Yeah, wow.
And it was my doing, because I could have had something to do with the club. However, something happened that I know was my mindset that got in the road of that. But you don't know what you don't know, as we were discussing before.
Yep.
So I basically had nothing to do with rugby league for the next 20 years.
Oh, wow. Were you even watching it?
Not really.
Oh.
I'd watch a grand final every now and again.
Yeah.
It sort of left a really bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I bet. So, like, did you have some really dark days in the early times after you finish?
Well, I wouldn't call them really dark. They were just lonely, and
Yeah.
you really didn't have there was nothing around you that could resemble the environment that you were in. And I knew no different. That was my work environment from the time I left school. So I went and I had another year off when I finished, and then went, oh, I probably should go get a job.
Yeah.
And I'd never had a job before then.
Yeah.
So I went and talked to a few people. The Burleigh Bears sent me down to an employment agency. And basically I got a job with the employment agency. Like straight away. I walked in and went, I need a job. And they went, we need a salesperson. And I went, okay.
Yeah. How cool.
And we were sitting there talking about income, like pay. And they sort of went, well, what do you expect to get paid and all this kind of stuff? And I went, oh, probably about 60 to 70 grand. And they went, oh, it's 35.
Yeah.
And I went, I was just getting 200.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience I used to call it the real world.
Yeah.
And it was a shock. Like I'd be getting $2,000 a week in my bank account playing footy, and then I'd get $500 a week in going to a job 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day.
Yeah, right.
Where you had to turn up, wear these really bad clothes, like, cotton buttoned up shirt, slacks, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So it was horrendous. The real world was terrible.
So how long before you start to do this research and ask questions? You talked about before we jumped on, you started questioning. And I said, what? Questioning life, existence? And you went, yeah, all of that, everything.
So 20 to 30, professional footy player.
Yeah.
30 to 40 was lost in the real world, in the wilderness of mundane, like brain dead, and basically at 40, I went, if this is all there is, I don't think I want to be here.
Oh, wow.
These were the questions. If there's nothing more than this, there's no point.
How did you then reconcile that?
Well, I went out. I was looking for whatever would, whatever self-help I could do to work it out.
Yeah. Was there like a gateway?
That's how I started.
Yeah. Was there like a gateway for you? Like I remember started listening to my first sort of proper mentor when I was asking those same questions. And he talked to us that you just talked about mindset. And I just couldn't get enough of all these audios that he put out. And eventually I signed up to work with him. But also then I'm like, give me more of this. Like, who else can I learn from? So I'm learning from some of those, personal development pioneers like Jim Rohn and Les Brown. Like, was there a sort of a stepping stone for you? Like, where did you sort of first venture into that world?
Well, the first thing that really made us change was the audio compact disc in the olden days.
Yeah.
Called Holysync.
Oh, don't know that one.
Well, it was like this was, and this was I didn't even know where it came from until recently because it's gone full circle.
Yeah.
So there's a place in America called the Monroe Institute.
Yep.
And it was started by Robert Monroe, who was the inventor of Holysync. It was a brain entrainment binaural beats thing. And it basically started me on a meditation journey. So that's what started it off. And then I went down the Tony Robbins route. I did a NLP course through Christopher Howard.
Yep.
And I was in that world. And so I just kept looking, kept reading books and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I got a phone call from a guy I worked with who went, "Mate, you got to go and do this seminar." And I went, "Yeah, no, I've been now 5 or 6 years doing the rounds of seminars."
Yep.
And I went, "Yeah, no, I'm nearly done with these seminars. Nothing's really working. Like NLP was just way too difficult for me."
Yeah, right.
And I went to this seminar, and basically 2-day weekend, they were doing this stuff that was woo-woo in my world because I'm science-based.
Landmark?
Kind of stuff. No, it was called Universal Intelligence.
Yeah.
And the guy who was doing it was tuning into people, and remember, I'm ex-footy player, and I sat there and crossed my arms and virtually walked out of the seminar. However, my wife at the time, who was an animal communicator, could talk to animals. Like, if you can believe that, she could talk to animals.
Yeah,
she went, So what they're doing here is exactly what I do, but I do it with animals. They're doing it with humans. So after the first seminar, you could go back again. So 3 months later, they were back in town, so I was back at the seminar.
Yeah.
I actually got up and walked out again.
I love it.
3 months later, they were back in town again. I went to the seminar because you didn't have to pay.
Yeah.
And I took some people there to the seminar. I sat through this one, all the way through this one.
Because you'd brought people.
Yeah, well, because I brought people. And I left and I had the shits so when I went home, I actually sat on the couch and went, "Okay, I'm just going to do what they told me to do." So I went through the process that I was taught. And that's changed my life.
I love it.
Because I sat there, went into my subconscious mind. I was able to, what I call it now, upgrade my mental software through a process that literally could shift my life from one state to another instantaneously.
I love it. Love it. I love that you've included the animal communicator. I know it's part of your story, but to me, that is a bit of a gateway because it's easy to understand because animals just do this in nature all over the place. Apparently there's a species of bird where one of them learns and every member of the species learns the same lesson. It's been fascinating just watching after I've learned a lot of this stuff with a new dog and just how good at guiding him through pattern recognition and behavior, and whether you call that animal communication or what, like I'm forever. Yeah. I'm communicating, not just verbally, But it is for people who are now listening to what Tony's saying and getting a bit, I'm not quite following this. Yeah, that is a good stepping stone, shall we say, to look at it from that perspective with animals, for sure.
She used to telepathically communicate with them. She could see in her mind she would tell you what they're going to do, what leg they would move.
Yeah, wow. On my previous podcast, when I dealt with grief, I had a lady on who did the same. She could just look at the picture of the animal and tell you what had happened. And with my dog, it very much lined up with what the stories were being told by the foster parents as well. And I don't know if you do this now, but it's like then doing this with humans and helping them to tap into that as well is such a powerful exercise, because people, again, we talked about that control, that the level of control that you can have on how you're reacting to things, on even how your body reacts, like illness, injury, all of these different things. It will blow your mind right open, right?
Well, that one belief, it was called a belief change when I did this. So,
yeah.
So that one belief change, I went, holy shit, I have got some control here. It's not just, I didn't know anything about the brain, all the stuff we just talked about, had no concept of. I got shown a method that allowed me to literally allowed me to change for the first time in my life and know that I wasn't stuck. So from that moment, I was all in. We literally quit our jobs and worked for these people.
So good.
We went to America for 5 weeks, and I sat in halls and all that kind of stuff, and had people come and sit down in front of me for 5 weeks straight, day after day after day, practicing my what they call tuning ability. So that was the best education I could have got. I was in another country, no one knew who I was. I was able to practice a skill, and it's the difference between what they do in psychology and what we're doing with an energy psychology is actually changing a program, which is a moment in time. When you're a child, you'll have something happen connected to an emotion. It's going to create a memory, and you go back into that memory. You can repattern that memory and change the way the body will predict the next time. So get the connection to the prediction.
Forever.
The body predicts. Yeah, forever, like instantaneously.
Yeah.
This is not. There's a lot of it is repetition, just like training, right?
Yeah.
But when you can have the ability to quieten your mind, lower the brain waves. This is all science related. I didn't know this at the time, but this is all I was doing. Lowering the brain waves, slowing you down, gaining access to a super learning state, bringing up a specific memory. And because you're now a different age to when you got the memory, you have the ability to go, oh, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
Oh, what really happened? And then you can see it from a different perspective and repattern your brain so it doesn't make the same decision, the same prediction next time.
Yeah.
So I've got an example, and so everyone will relate to this, right? Guy had a phobia not a phobia, but a fear of getting up and speaking in public.
Yeah.
Real interesting. This guy, when I'd take him into his subconscious mind, he wouldn't remember what we'd done. So it was a real. So he'd go in, he'd go that far that we'd come out, and he would go, "Where did you get that information from?" And I'd go, "Well, you just told me about it." But, so we went awesome. In. Yeah. We changed the program, fear of public speaking. He gets back on the next week, and I went, how did your wedding go? And he went, oh my God, I got up and spoke and I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
And he's going, how did that happen? Because he doesn't remember the session because he's so far in that he literally didn't remember what he did. And I said, we reprogrammed the moment in time where you got the fear of public speaking. And he goes, well, it works.
Yeah. And the best bit is, I find, is exactly what you described there. People then go about their life and then they just live in a different way. And it's not until they then have a conversation about it. So it's not like it's this scary thing where suddenly life changes. No, life just carries on because you don't even know you're doing anything different until you reflect and go, oh, yeah. Because I had a similar experience, a singer going, oh, yeah, I had this thought like, a few days later, I'm like, I just did that and I had no nerves whatsoever. Fascinating. So, Tony, we've talked a lot about the concepts and a whole lot of things that for someone listening might be really quite hard for them to grasp. Can you give them something they can take away with them to practice, to apply to themselves that can help them start heading in the right direction? Obviously, in a short period of time, without having that personal interaction, there's only so much you can do. But is there something you can share for them if they want to just sort of dabble?
The easiest, so the second principle is if I'm not controlling my mind is controlling me, right?
Yep.
What we don't get is that 95 to 99% of our thoughts are actually made up from our mind. Our mind is actually doing stuff, right?
Yep.
But how do you know you can control your mind? So there's another principle is I'm a spiritual being having a journey in this body.
Yeah.
And because we can witness our mind. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're completely absorbed by it. But so I get people to go, okay, I want you to say the word elephant in your head. Can you do that?
Yep.
Can you say elephant, 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 elephant in your head for me, please? Yep, you can do that.
Yep.
You told your mind to do this. Your mind also runs on autopilot by itself.
Yep.
But that's the majority of the time.
Yeah.
So you need to bring your awareness to what your mind is doing when it's running by itself, because because it's nearly most of the time, that'll tell you how your day's going. So what the first thing people need to do is become aware that they are not their mind. Their mind makes up shit all day by itself. That is a program. Literally, you start your computer up, it knows how to boot itself up and run. Your mind is doing that every day based on everything you've learned up until now.
Yep.
Become aware of what your mind is saying, because we all do this, but we don't utilize it as a tool for growth. Sometimes you can stop yourself from saying something to someone who's important that would get you into trouble, right?
Yeah.
There are other times, and these are normally the people we love the most, we will hammer them with anything we want because we think they're going to stay around.
Yeah.
There are times when you can control your mind, and there's times where you can't. Times when you can control an emotion, and there are times when the prediction's way too big and it just floods the system.
Yep.
We can, through progressive time, minimize the negative emotions your brain will make just by becoming aware and stopping the thought. Because when I talked about the prediction model and I said 600 milliseconds, your brain will start to make a decision. And this is Benjamin LeBay did this experiment in the 70s. and he called it readiness potential.
Yep.
The brain activates 600 milliseconds before the action happens. Right? That's how we play cricket and baseball. The brain reacts. The brain develops the process 600 milliseconds before the action happens. There's a window. There's a 200 millisecond window where you become aware of something. So at 400 milliseconds, your brain's going to recognize that it's made a decision, whether it's a movement or a thought or an emotion, right? So you know how there's times where you can catch your emotion and go, "Ooh, I won't say that," or I, you know, "Ooh, I'm angry at her, but I'm not gonna. That's not gonna come out my mouth."
Yep.
That's because you are clear enough to understand get through the process. But if you're sleepy, if you're tired, hungover, or whatever, you know what? How you have a lot less resistance? Because you're not as present and you're distracted, and the brain takes over by itself.
Yeah. Keep going.
So these are the important things. If someone out there, you know you can do it already. You already do it already. You already pull yourself up. You already catch an emotion before it gets out. And there are times when you just lose your shit and you're fully absorbed into an emotion. So you've got to, the more you start to become aware of your emotions, the more you look after your health and stay healthy and get your sleep and drink your water and eat proper food and all this kind of stuff. Because every time you're tired, you have less resistance.
Yep.
And your brain is just going to do the shit for you, and you're going to be at the mercy of your brain.
Yeah. I can certainly relate to that. My last couple of years in corporate, going back 8 to 10 years ago, was very much in that cycle of there was a bit of child-induced sleep deprivation as well, but alcohol, caffeine, late nights, more caffeine, and eventually the body just says, we're not doing this anymore. Adrenal fatigue, extreme burnout, all those different things. But if ever you needed a motivation to get healthy, it's exactly what you just said then, Tony. So for the listeners, the reason why you can do it sometimes and not others, because if you're not in a good place physically, then your brain has less of a capacity to keep you on track. And when you are really prioritizing it, it's amazing how much better that self-awareness can get, right?
So every time the people out there stop a thought, a negative thought in its tracks, we will start to prune it out of the system.
Yeah.
That's the easiest thing I can get people to do, is become aware of their thoughts and go, no, I'm not going to think this anymore. I'm going to take responsibility of this thought. I'm not going to blame my wife. I'm not going to blame that teammate. I'm going to stop that thought and just go, no, I'm going to replace it with another thought, because that is you then controlling your mind.
Yep. And a good way to, I don't know if you're a fan of this, but a good way to keep yourself on track of that is with journaling, to recognize when you have done it well, to maybe question the days when you haven't, because then you'll start to see more of those patterns and your self-awareness will get even better, right? Because you're actually tracking the
100%.
data and
Okay, so I call it a video review, because what do athletes do every week? Do they go over the game with a fine-tooth comb and get you to where every mistake you made and went, you can do it better here?
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's 80 minutes of a week. we live in this 100% of the time.
Yeah.
How about we start reviewing our emotions? How
Every
about
day.
we start writing that shit down and going, oh, I really handled that situation pretty poorly.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a video review of that. This is what I felt. And this is what I thought about. And this is how I dealt with it. Well, this is how I'm going to deal with it better next time. Because any negative emotion is a waste of time. If you're an athlete out there, and you want to recover in between training sessions, do not have a negative emotion, because it does exactly what physical training does. This is the shit like. You want to talk to an athlete? This is the shit the athlete of me wanted to know.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought it back to there, because how you described that, and it's amazing. Like, we've never met till today, and how much of the same language we use. Not everyone's using this language, but we've obviously had a very similar experience. And you talked about you didn't want anyone else to go through what you went through without having that help. And to me, that's the essence of purpose, because that's my own journey. It's like, I don't want anyone to have to go through alone what I went through, of similar experience to you, not fitting in and not having, well, for me, it was like not having a level of confidence. And it's like, but if you're looking for any sort of purpose, it starts with that. What have you experienced and you now help other people doing? Because what Tony's described today is basically what he has created, including this obsession with improvement, the book that you've written, all these people that you've helped over the years, has come as a result of you looking at the world through that lens. It's been such a powerful conversation, mate. I really appreciate it.
But I go back to the brain all the time.
Yeah.
I can only give you the stuff that I know.
Yeah.
Because your brain can't use anything that's not already in there, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds really dumb when I say that, but I mean, you go, your brain can't use what's not already in there. So,
yeah.
Like, you go back and I go, I could have done so much better as an athlete. Well, I couldn't have done any better as an athlete with what I had.
Yeah.
I didn't have any more to give because I didn't know this stuff. My real goal is to see if we can create Superman.
Have you read Steve Kotler's The Rise of Superman?
I've read every Steve Kotler book you can get.
Good.
So, but here's my theory on that, just to give you a quick anecdote of why I think Superman. Yeah. How much of the DNA? How much of our DNA have they mapped?
Small fractions.
Yeah. Less than 3%.
Yeah.
Then you go to Bruce Lipton's work, epigenetics, right?
Yep.
And the environment signals the gene.
So reverse thinking.
So my thinking is, how do we change the mind to eliminate all the negative emotions we have, because they're the things that send signals to our genes, to switch them off. Joe Dispenza is showing us that when you go to one of his retreats, you're switching on 1,100 different genes within 5 days.
Yeah.
You're turning different genes on. So I go, if we're only using 3% of and so what is the other 97%? And they only mapped the genome in 2003.
See, that question, I don't know if you remember watching Great Mysteries of the World back when you were a young fella. I used to come on so late 80s at like about 5 o'clock, just as it was getting dark, and I was fascinated by it. And one of the things they used to talk about was exactly, not, you were talking about the DNA, but they were talking about the brain. Well, we only actually utilize a small percentage of the brain, and what else are we capable of? Maybe some of these things, that these paranormal experiences and supernatural and so on. And I remember at that age, just as a young teen, going like, wow, yeah, what else is possible? And if, for the listeners again, if you just listen to everything Tony said, you might have to go back and listen to this one again. But when you come from that fascination and curiosity, it's amazing what you can find, right, mate?
Well, I sit there and go, okay, the athletes that we have, they're the best. They're self-selected to be at the best, right? They're the best.
Yeah.
I played 103 first grade games in the NRL, right? So I was good. I wasn't great, but I stressed for 6 years while I was there. I had self-doubt. I was struggling. I missed 2 games in 5 years, and then I missed virtually 2 seasons because my body broke. Imagine if I was in a state of happiness, joy, gratitude, and was just loving everything I did. What other DNA could I have done? Because the DNA creates an RNA that creates our protein. So how much better protein, which means how much better of a body could I have? How much better muscles could I have if I really enjoyed it instead of struggling through it all?
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in if the stress isn't there, does the injuries happen? Because the body under stress gets injured, right?
Well, so where do you hold your trauma? Where do you, like, if the body does keep the score, it's the theory out there, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that's another one of your books you've absorbed.
So but these are, so I sort of figure, how do I get the knowledge to get people better, I have to impart that knowledge into my brain so I can actually spin it into a theory that's my theory eventually in the end, right? Because none of this stuff's new, is it?
No, it's just applying it to different.
Yeah, we're just regurgitating information that we've taken in to do something. I'm seeing great results in people's performance.
Yep.
I'm seeing great results in people's mental health.
Yeah.
I'm seeing great results in people having, like, one of the kids I worked with this year was trying out for the Olympics, and then he was like full swimming in the middle of his HSC.
Awesome.
And he just breezed through his HSC. He's now studying law, and he's doing a double degree in law and something else. And he's just killing it because he doesn't have virtually no mental baggage. And he's swimming full time in that as well. You know what they're doing it before and after. Like, they're not paid to do this stuff. And I'm just looking at him like he's a nut job. But he just breezed through his HSC because he didn't have any stress. He's a smart kid, but
yeah, but stress has been the undoing of many smart kids, though.
You know, I worked with a Commonwealth Games weightlifter who improved 20% within the first 20% in ellipse in the first 6 months we worked together, and she won a silver medal at a Commonwealth Games.
How good!
And her coaches, I was working with her because I knew her coaches through CrossFit.
Yep.
And they're coming back going, this isn't just about her lifting. She's in the gym and now she looks like a professional athlete. She comes in and she's confident now, and she, just performance doesn't come from just doing more work. It comes from getting the shit out of here so you can turn up every day to do the work properly.
Yeah, love it. Tony, I could talk about this stuff for hours and hours. I'm going to wrap it up there, so because we might be here all night. Mate, I appreciate you so much coming on, investing this time and energy. I also appreciate the fact that you were patient as I got held up earlier today, so that we've gone way over what we originally scheduled. I appreciate it, mate, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise today. There's so much for people to take out of this. Yeah, I appreciate it, mate. So where's the best place for people to find you? I know you're building the website, the book coming out soon, but until then.
Yeah, so my program is called Valhalla Mind. So Valhalla is the Hall of the Gods in Norse, in Viking times.
Yep.
And you only got to go there if you died on the battlefield fighting with Valor. So Valhalla is heaven for warriors. So what the name represents is a heaven mind.
Love it.
So it's valhallamind.com.au. The only place you'll find me on socials is LinkedIn, because I got kicked off Facebook.
I can guess why. We don't need to go into that today.
Yeah. I was associating with the wrong people.
Yeah.
And I will get back. I will get onto all the socials once I get my website up and running and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you're on LinkedIn, just look up Tony Priddle. I will have my website. I don't know, it might be about a month probably. If you want the book, just email me, tonypriddle@hotmail.com. I'll just send it out because I'm getting a few people to read it right now. And I'm not sure on my marketing strategy on the book. I sort of got the message I needed to give it away to as many athletes as I could, because this is the information I needed when I played. So it may be down that route. So I'll get a bit of feedback on that and I'll go from there.
Well, you know how it is. People, the information's all there, but what they need is help with implementation. So I think giving it away is a great idea. Some will take what they need from the book and others will want to come work with you. Yeah,
well, it's hopefully going to be a good lead gen, but it's I have some theories that I really sometimes can't talk about because they're so far down the track, and the establishment doesn't. If I went in and did talk to certain people about it, they would just not get it, because most of my clients don't get it until about 6 to 8 weeks in.
Yeah.
And then all the pieces start falling together and they go, I get what you were talking about way back then. But you have to have a really mental shift to be able to do it. And so it's been one of the, just seeing the range of people that this is universal. It doesn't I don't just work with athletes. I just want to work with athletes, but I don't just work with athletes.
Yeah.
Because I can see the potential of 30 people all at once doing the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess that's like when you're learning this, you're learning it with other people, and you see the power of having that community. It's something that you talked about in your story too, right? Is by having that taken away, but finding more of these communities where people connect on this level. It's well worth the listeners investigating. Mate, I'm getting my phone ringing off the hook because I've got another engagement to get to. I appreciate it again. Great episode. Thank you, mate.
Cool, my pleasure. And so we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, cool. Cheers, mate. That's a wrap on today's episode with Tony Priddle, and what a powerful reminder of the role that the mind plays in our performance and purpose. As you reflect on this conversation, think about how these lessons can shape your own life game plan. Building self-awareness around the thoughts that trip you up or hold you back. Learn to shift your thinking instead of staying stuck in negative loops. Understanding how to manage emotions so they don't manage you. And tapping into the full potential of your mind to get the most out of yourself, not just in sport, but in life. If this episode made you think differently, or if you know someone who's facing their own performance challenges, share this episode with them. It might be exactly what they need to hear today. You've taken the time to listen to this whole episode. Now it's time to take action. Commit to one thing you've learned today and make it happen. And to avoid any obstructions, join the Sport is Life movement by clicking on the link in the show notes.